Good day everyone, my name is Diane and I am here to share my knowledge to you about the Ports Operation Manual of CMO 10-2010. Chapter 1 of the Operations Manual, the Administrative Provisions. Section 1, the Base Service Section of Equivalent Office. The boarding formalities and the entrance and clearance of foreign vessels must go first to the Base Service Section, who is in charge that supervisions and implement security measures in the discharging or loading of import or export shipments as well as to incoming or outgoing crew, passengers, and visitors on board such vessel. The base service section shall headed by a chief who control, supervise, and direct overall personnel, issuance of instructions to customs senior boarding officer, and which shall return and held responsible for the proper execution of the instructions given from time to time and render reports. Section 2. Uniforms of Insignia, Piers, and Inspection Division. During working days, the Chief, Base Service Section, Customs Senior Boarding Officer, Customs Inspector, Customs Guards, and Wharfingers must always wear their appropriate uniforms, including their insignia, nameplate, customs lodge, black shoes, and regulation cup. Section 3. Duties or responsibilities of Customs Operation Officer or Customs Senior Boarding Officers. The Customs Senior Boarding Officer has the following duties or responsibilities, and these are: first, Customs Senior Boarding Officer as assessed by the Customs Inspector, assigned on a vessel to which foreign vessel outside the breakwater or harbor if it was prevented by stress of weather. No one shall allow to enter the captain's cabin, and only the Customs Inspector, Customs Senior Boarding Officer. If not, the captain chooses to give information to Customs Senior Boarding Officers. Second, inside the foreign vessel, the master gets the information as required by the BOC OPN 4 number 15 or records of vessel boarded. As amended of Tariff and Customs Code of the Philippines of Section 2530, it says that if there were excess involved during working hours, the Customs Inspector and the Customs Guard should properly wear their prescribed uniform. If they will not, the Customs Senior Boarding Officer will not allow them to enter and mark them as absent, and the Senior Boarding Officer will make its responsibilities. And lastly, the Customs Inspector or Customs Guard has to ensure all supplies needed in working hours, and shall have a copy of Tariff and Customs Code of the Philippines and a manual for port operations. And report of Customs Senior Boarding Officer. Section 4. Duties or responsibilities of Customs Operation Officer or Customs Inspector. Customs Inspector has its duties or responsibilities, and these are: Section 2202 of Tariff and Customs Code of the Philippines, supervise the discharge and loading of cargo and to supervise continuous surveillance to protect the interests of the customs service. Responsible for the proper disposal of all cargo and stores on board vessels under discharge. Represent the customs service and its official relations. Stay in the vessel that has been assigned if it is necessary. Honor any order, request, or permit of the following: Commissioner of Customs or Deputy Commissioner of Customs, Collector of Customs or Deputy Collector for Operations, Chief or Assistant Chief, Piers and Inspection Division, Chief Base Service Section, and lastly, Customs Senior Boarding Officer. Work in harmony at all times with customs employees with the immigration officers. Cooperate with quarantine authorities in the enforcement of port quarantine regulation promulgated by the Bureau of Quarantine. The Tariff and Customs Code of the Philippines familiarize the provisions to Customs Administrative Orders, Customs Memorandum Order, and circulars issued by the Bureau of Customs pertinent to their duties, and reference to the Customs Senior Boarding Officer or Chief Service Section or equivalent office, and the specific duties upon assuming charge of vessel. Customs Inspector, duty first upon assuming charge of a vessel. Customs Guard, which instructed by Customs Inspector to conduct body searches assigned by gangway if it is necessary. The Customs Inspector shall make periodic inspection if the vessel has been docked at pier or wharf. And the gangway is an area in which the Customs Inspector require proper lighting if the vessel docks at night. And the relationship of Customs Inspector with Customs Guards under his supervision, and has revised Customs Port Operations Manual. For time of departure, nature of business, destination, where and when he is to report upon the completion of his business, and time return. And the discharging sequence are inward foreign manifest, the received to logbook by Customs wharfinger. Report after termination of duty. The Customs Inspector, upon submission of his report, shall register the time and date of his vessel departure in the priority listing of Customs Inspectors for assignments and has supporting documents upon reports of Customs Inspector. But when the Customs Guard ordered to report to Customs boarding officers, accurate checks that are essential to all cargoes discharged from and located on a vessel. For all permits, entries, and other documents received by the Customs Inspector on board of a vessel shall be endorsed by him upon completion of his portion of the action directed. For such endorsement, these are the date when the action was accomplished, the action taken, and the portion of action unaccomplished, except for those instances of other customs official. Section 5 of Port Utilization Section. This Port Utilization Section supervises the receiving, handling, custody, monitoring, movement, and release of shipments at pier or customs zone, and shall be headed by the Chief. Section 6. Duties and responsibilities of Assistant Customs Operations Officer or wharfingers. At the pier or CYCFS, that shall have wharfinger in charge of each pier, for responsible for efficiency and discipline of customs personnel, and outside CYCFS or off dock, one wharfinger in charge of outside CYCFS, who shall be responsible for the efficiency as well as discipline of customs personnel under him. Section 7. Duties and responsibilities of Assistant Customs Operation Officer or designated Assistant Wharfinger. The Assistant Wharfinger shall maintain his specific inside the shed to each warehouse that under direct charge and supervision. At the pier or CYCFS, Custom Guard shall see to it that no inflammable, dangerous, and omniscious are discharged on dock without proper permit. On board vessel, Customs Guard shall ensure that no person is allowed to board the vessel without written pass, excepting on board vessel, Customs Guard shall ensure that no person is allowed to board the vessel without written pass, excepting the stevedores to attend the discharging. Outside CYCFS or off dock, a Customs Guard shall assist the shed wharfinger in supervising the receiving, handling, custody, delivery, and stowage of cargo inside the shed by arrestry operations. while in Section 9, it has the duties and responsibilities of Assistant Customs Operations Officer or designated customs gatekeepers, while in Section 10, it is the reporting time of customs personnel, the reporting time of customs senior boarding officers, customs inspector, and customs guard, to shall report at and stay in the office of the chief, piers and inspection division or its equivalent office, and assigned to vessel arriving before 8 a.m. and after 5 p.m. to report for duly at least 2 hours before vessel estimated time of arrival. Outside CYCFS or off-dock, a customs guard shall assist the shed warehouse wharfinger in supervising the receiving, handling, custody, delivery, and stowage of cargo inside the shed or warehouse by arrestry operators. And lastly, the custom guard shall perform any other work that may be assigned to him from time to time by his superiors. Section 11. Meals and accommodation for designated customs inspector and customs guard. And there are 2 ways. These are the onboard vessel and the outports or travel expenses. Section 12. Leave and absence. Shall field and approve for application of vacation leave before such leave of absence unless prevented by unforeseen circumstances beyond his control, but application for sick leave shall be filled with 2 days after return and exists of 3 days supported by medical certificate. For any officer of employee detained by causes beyond his control and unable to report for duty at prescribed hour, reporting must notify the office that effect within 2 hours if practicable. Operational provisions has statutory provision on entrance and clearance of Section 13, the provision of Section 1201 to 1218 of CMTA as amended on entrance and clearance of vessels are deemed incorporated in this manual. Section 14. The pre-arrival. Notice of arrival or NOAA with estimated time of arrival or ETA. Assignment of boarding team shall be assigned by the Chief, Base Service Section, or equivalent office through duly signed assignment order and has following customs personnel including Customs Senior Boarding Officer, Customs Inspector, and Customs Guard, and has submission of advanced electronic manifest before arrival of vessels engaged in foreign trade through E2M customs system and penalties and for registration of e-manifest. Section 15. Arrival, documents or permits, and these are including quarantine certificate for incoming vessels from a foreign port, entrance of vessel from a foreign port, documents to be produced by master upon entry of vessel, inward foreign manifest or IFM, and consolidated cargo manifest or CCM contents, permits for discharge and loading of cargo, endorsement of permits, and shipment permits, including 3 kinds of permits, and these are: first, regular shipside permit issued by Deputy Collector, special shipside permit when cargoes do not belong to regular shipside cargoes, and temporary shipside permit written to authority to discharge cargoes at shipside until later as per order of the Collector of Customs. and including transfer note or boat note, boarding sequence, customs boarding team on foreign vessel, actual time of arrival or ATA of foreign vessel through E2M customs system, submission of supplemental cargo manifest, unloading of cargoes, to which containerize to book and break book, and unloading of book and break book cargoes at shipside. Section 16. Departure. It means that your parcel has been checked the customs and would leave for the destination soon, including the documents or permits, which documents required for exportation. First is in the general, under export declaration, commercial invoice, packing list, and export permit for regulated cargoes. Additional documents required of CBW shipments, PEZA shipments, provincial loading, constructive warehousing, and immediate exportation, and special permit to load. Inspector's certificate of loading or report of customs inspector on board. The inspector's certificate of lading is accomplished by the customs inspector on a board of carrying vessel for all conventional export cargoes located in vessel. Customs clearance of foreign vessel for purposes of clearances of a vessel and following documents shall be presented to the PID clearance section prior to the issuance of clearance. The BOC OPM form number 12, the BOC OPM form number 10, BOC OPM form number 11, BOC OPM form number 2, BOC OPM number 3, BC form number 88, Bureau of Quarantine clearance for outgoing vessels, planned quarantine clearance, post office clearance, request for customs clearance by shipping agency signed by customs inspector. Customs clearance of foreign vessel for a purpose of clearances of a vessel and following documents shall be presented to the PID clearance section prior to the issuance of clearance. The BOC OPM form number 12, BOC OPM form number 10, BOC OPM form number 11, BOC OPM form number 2, BOC OPM form number 3, BC form number 88, Bureau of Quarantine in clearance of outgoing vessel, planned quarantine clearance, post office clearance, request for custom clearance by shipping agency signed by customs inspector that is ready to sail for foreign port, the register and shipping articles if the vessel is of Philippine registry, and a consular certificate of entry if the vessel is of foreign registry when required.
Good day everyone, I am Diane Vitor and I will discuss about the stuffing and loading of cargoes. First is containerized. Upon the issuance of the authority to load, the export declarations or permits duly processed at the export division shall be forwarded to the Customs Container Control Division by exporters or shippers or customs representatives. The notice of stuffing shall be submitted at least 24 hours in advance, indicating therein the kind of quantity to be stuffed, the container number to which cargoes shall be stuffed, and the time stuffing will start, the address where stuffing will be done, and the name of the exporter or shippers. The assigned stuffing inspector shall not allow stuffing of export cargoes into the container van unless the duly processed export declarations or permits of the cargoes to be stuffed shall have been presented with the authority to load stamp thereon. The assigned stuffing inspector shall supervise the actual stuffing, which shall be conducted in the presence of representatives from all parties concerned. Upon the completion of the conduct of stuffing, the assigned stuffing inspector shall affix his signature on the stuffing report or sequence attesting to the fact that the cargoes were intended to stuff into the container. In case of stuffing at CYCFS outside customs zone, he shall issue a transfer note with cargo details and the cargo guarded by the CYCFS customs guard for the delivery to the loading inspector assigned to the carrying vessel. Next is the duties and responsibilities of the stuffing inspector. The stuffing inspector shall supervise the actual stuffing at the place where it shall be conducted. He shall see to it that only those export cargoes with duly processed export declarations or permits with the authority to load shall be allowed to be stuffed into the container van. He shall ascertain the accompanying supporting documents or attachments to export declarations or permits are complete and correspond to what has been cleared therein. He shall make sure that any discrepancy in the export declarations or permit as against the export cargoes to be stuffed is rectified accordingly. Upon completion of the stuffing, he shall ascertain that the doors of the container van are closed, locked, and properly sealed. Inspector Certificate of Lading or Report of the Stuffing Inspector. The stuffing inspector shall accomplish the inspector certificate of lading, specifying the number of containers and description of goods appearing on each of the export declaration or permit, noting in the remarks of column the van number opposite the cargoes contained in one export declaration or permit. For export cargo stuff or placed in container vans, the Inspector Certificate of Lading or ICL shall be accomplished in 5 copies and signed by the stuffing inspector assigned to conduct actual stuffing. He shall submit the original copy of the ICL together with the working copies of the export declaration or permits covered by the report of the export division concerned with the 5 working days after the departure of the carrying vessel to which the containerized export cargoes were loaded. Duty, requirements, and overtime work conditions. All incidental expenses like allowance, meal, and transportation allowance attendant to the services rendered by the stuffing inspector for the conduct of actual stuffing shall be for the account of the exporter or shipper and or CYCFS operator served. Stuffing of containers in customs bonded warehouses. When export cargoes are to be stuffed in containers at shippers' customs bonded warehouse, the stuffing shall be supervised by the warehouseman. Upon completion of stuffing, the warehouseman shall seal the container and take note on his transfer note the number of the container, the kind of the quantity of its content, and also state therein the same is to be transferred from the customs bonded warehouse to the distant port of loading. Customs guard assigned to the customs bonded warehouse shall underguard the container until properly received by the Customs Container Control Division loading inspector. Loading of bulk and break-bulk export cargoes at ship side. Loading of export cargoes shall be effected only upon presentation to the customs inspector on board a duly approved loading permit. The customs inspector on board must see to it that the name of the carrying vessel stated in the loading permit is correct. All cargoes at ship's side shall have the appropriate permits for such loading. The customs inspector shall take note of the names of the lighters where the export cargoes are loaded, specifying the marks and numbers, and must see to it that what was loaded conformed to the number of packages appearing on the export entry. Loading of bulk cargoes at ship's side shall be subject to weighing. The importer concerned shall make a request for the assignment of a customs guard to check the actual weighing of such bulk cargoes in their respective warehouses prior to the loading on barges. Loading of containers, whether loaded or empty, at ship's side from lighter should not be allowed because of the difficulty of checking the numbers and content of loaded containers should verification be required. All containers, whether loaded or not, should be loaded from the pier. Instructions relative to loading and containerized export cargoes. The loading inspector assigned to the carrying vessel shall verify and ascertain that the export declaration or permits with container numbers indicated therein have been duly processed at the Customs Container Control Division, duly signed by the Chief Customs Container Control Division or his duly authorized representative. The loading inspector shall not allow the loading of containerized export cargoes into his assigned vessel without the corresponding duly processed export declaration or permits with the authority to load stamped thereon. The loading inspector shall allow the loading only upon presentation of an authority to load by the following: the Export Division or the One-Stop Export Documentation Center for regular exports, special permits to load SPL, local transshipment, CBW, export transshipments, and PEZA shipments. Next is the Export Coordination Division or ECD for the export declaration process by ECD for provincial loading. Next is the Office of the Deputy Collector for the operations for constructive warehousing and immediate exportation and foreign transshipment permits, and the last one is the CCCD for SPL empty containers. The loading inspector shall make sure that the container to be loaded are intended to his assigned vessel for the particular voyage of the vessel. Upon verification that all the export containerized cargo are covered by the export declaration of permits, he shall then consolidate all the pertinent export declarations or permits and sign the sequence of loading prepared by the shipping agent and submit the same to the customs inspector on the board and carrying vessel before commencement of loading. Duties and responsibilities of loading inspector. The loading inspector shall inspect and see to it that all containerized report cargoes are covered or duly processed export declarations or permits prior to loading. He shall sign and submit the sequence of loading prepared by the shipping agent to the inspector on boarding carrying vessel. He shall prepare and sign the inspector's certificate of lading or ICL and forward the same to the Export Division or Processing Office together with the copies of approved export declaration or permits within the 5 working days from the departure of the vessel. He shall certify and sign certificate of inspection and loading or CIL 24 hours after the departure of the vessel or for warehousing shipments, and he shall perform such other duties that may be assigned to him from time to time by his superior. Inspector Certificate of Loading or Report of the Loading Inspector. After completion of loading, the loading inspector assigned to the carrying vessel shall within 5 working days after the vessel's departure accomplish the Inspector Certificate of Lading or ICL and attach therewith properly endorsed export declarations or permits to be submitted to the Export Division or Processing Office or the equivalent unit concerned. Duty requirements and overtime working conditions. The District Collector of the Customs may authorize overtime service when the interest of the service so requires. The overtime service rendered by the loading inspectors are to be paid by the shipping agent, exporter or shippers, as the case may be, pursuant to the rates provided for by the regulations. Next is bulk and break bulk. Loading of export cargoes at dockside. Export permits covering export loading shall be presented to the customs inspector prior to the actual loading. The customs guard shall make a tally of the actual packages or containers being loaded, checking the numbers of the packages, marks and numbers against the export entry presented. The customs inspector shall have no authority to inspect or open the goods being loaded unless otherwise authorized in writing by the collector of customs. Loading of bulk and break bulk export cargo. The customs inspector on board the vessel shall permit the loading of export cargo only upon presentation of an authority to load issued by the following. First, Export Division or One-Stop Export Documentation Center for CBW shipments, regular exports, and PEZA. Next, Export Coordination Division or ECD for export declarations processed by ECD for provincial loading. Next is Office of the Deputy Collector for the operations for constructive warehousing and immediate exportation and foreign transshipment permits. He shall carefully verify the loading permit as to the quantity and kind of cargoes to be laden and board the vessel. He shall comply with the instructions appearing in the permit, if any, of the issuing authority. He shall make certain that the cargo to be exported is intended for the vessel of which he is in charge and for the particular voyage of the vessel. For all exportations loaded at shipside, the exporter will send to the customs inspector on board of the vessel through the patron of the carrier a note of conduce which will show, first is the name of the vessel which the cargo is consigned. Next is the name and license number of the carrier. Next is the number of bags, bales, cartoons, etc. and it contains. Next is the number of the exporter, and the last one is the number of the export declaration. As it is being loaded, export cargo shall be checked by marks and numbers, if any, except shipments of bulk cargoes. The customs inspector on board must see to it that only those authorized on the loading permit are to be loaded. The customs guard assigned to the supervised loading of export must see to it that each export declaration presented for loading must be accompanied with a guard's check report made by him. When export cargo weigh on shore under customs supervision is exported, no quantity in excess of weight declared shall be received on board. However, if the weight of the total number of packages loaded is less than the weight declared, the customs inspector on board shall make note of this fact on the export declaration, which shall be attested by the chief officer of the vessel. Upon completion of lading, the customs inspector on board shall execute the inspector's certificate of lading in 5 copies. He shall see to it that all export declarations presented to him for loading are all accounted for and all the cargoes stated therein have been fully loaded. Otherwise, he shall make a report of discrepancy, which such cargo appearing therein the permit are short ship. Loading of passengers, baggage, or crew personal effects. The customs inspector on board shall not examine incoming passengers' baggage. However, if no examiner is on hand during nighttime, Sundays, and holidays, the customs inspector on board may inspect and pass the hand-carry personal effects of incoming passengers, retaining on board articles, goods, and effects subject to duty and or tax, which should be sent to the office of the Bay Service Section. PID under transfer notes and under guarded. The customs inspector shall also render transfer notes and on the face of the original of which the receiving customs personnel is in charge at the office of the Bay Service Section shall indicate his receipt. Section 17. The Customs Transit. Customs transits means the customs procedure under which goods are transported under customs control from one customs office to another. Customs transit operation refers to the transport of goods from an office of departure to an office of destination under customs transit. Customs transit by overland transportation shall be subject to such additional conditions as proper customs authority may impose, provided it shall be underguarded until received by the collector of the customs or deputy collector for operations at the port of destination, and provided further that the compartment where the cargo is stored or each and every package thereof be sealed with customs seal. There are 4 kinds of customs transit operation. First is from port of entry to another port of entry as exit point for outright exportation. Example, local POM to Subic. Second is from port of entry to another port of entry or inland customs office. Example, POM to PEZA or outside CYCFS or off dock. The third one is from an inland customs office to port of entry as exit point for outright exportation. Example, PEZA to POM. And the last one is from one port of entry or inland customs office to another port of entry or inland customs office. For example, CBW to CBW, CBW to PEZA, and PEZA to PEZA. Section 18. Transshipment. Customs procedure under which goods are transferred under customs control from the importing means of transport to the exporting means of transport within the area of one custom office, which is the office of both importation and exportation. For example, foreign transshipment. Special instructions to customs inspectors relative to the discharge of transshipped cargo. Goods from a foreign port may be transshipped direct from the carrying vessel to another vessel engaged in the coastwise or foreign trade upon receipt or written permission from the collector of customs. When a foreign transshipment permit authorizing the transfer of a cargo from a foreign port is received by a customs inspector on board of a foreign vessel, he shall permit the discharge of the consignment, causing it to be checked by marks and numbers. A description of the consignment shall appear in the permit or in a list as attached, and the utmost precaution shall be taken that no cargo is discharged on its authority other than that described therein. Besides the permit, the customs inspector shall require transit or transshipment cargo manifest in triplicate. The transit or transshipment cargo manifest shall be forwarded to the receiving vessel together with the corresponding transfer note in the triplicate to be received by the master of carrying vessel and note by the wharfinger or the customs inspector on board of the receiving vessel. Bulk and break bulk cargoes for foreign transshipment shall either be discharged directly into the receiving vessel if it comes alongside, or otherwise transship it in lighters or discharged at the pier for eventually loading to the receiving vessel. In the latter case, only lighters capable of being secured, locked, sealed, customs accredited, and insured shall be used. The cargo destined for each port shall be discharged into separate lighters or into separate compartments of the same lighter, provided that the compartment can be separately locked and sealed. Any deviation from the requirements of this section shall be made only upon instruction from the collector of customs or other proper authorities. The lighters containing the transit or transshipment cargo shall remain under guard until it is loaded in the receiving vessel and properly receipted by the master of said vessel. Instructions relative to foreign transshipment by CCCD. After having been duly processed at the Deputy Collector for Operations, the foreign transshipment permit in case of containerized cargo with its supporting document shall be coursed through the Customs Container Control Division for posting or of container numbers and their eventual loading. The loading inspector assigned to carrying vessel shall verify the correctness of the container numbers indicated in the permit prior to loading of transit or transshipment cargoes on board the carrying vessel. Section 19. Transfer of imported cargo to outside CYCFS by CCCD. After having been duly processed at the Office of the Deputy Collector for Operations, the permit to transfer to outside CYCFS shall be coursed through the Customs Container Control Division for posting of container numbers and their eventual transfer. The permit to transfer to outside CYCFS shall then be transmitted to the Office of the Chief or PID. Miscellaneous Provisions. Section 20. Certificate for Quarantine Cargo. When cargo manifested for any port in the Philippines is retained on board the importing vessel by order of the quarantine officer or any other officer authorized to issue such order, the customs inspector on board, after verifying said cargo, shall make a certificate of constructive lading as of the bill of lading. Section 21. Use of boarding watercraft. The customs senior boarding officer shall not permit anyone to go with the customs boarding watercraft upon departure from the pier except customs inspector and customs guard duly assigned to vessels to be boarded. Customs inspectors and customs guards assigned by the chief base service sections to substitute for absent personnel and those specially granted in writing by the chief, piers and inspection division may be given the privilege to use the boarding watercraft. Section 22. Baggage Declaration Entry. Baggage declaration properly accomplished by the incoming passengers shall be presented to the customs inspector on board or to customs examiner or appraiser upon boarding of the vessel. It is required that an itemized enumeration thereon of the articles obtained abroad, showing the quantity and the corresponding invoice price should be made in the baggage declarations. Articles, wares, goods, merchandise, and other cargo acquired abroad not so declared shall be liable to leisure and subject to the penalties of the customs law. Section 23. Vessel clearing for foreign ports applying for bunkers. The customs inspector on board of a vessel clearing for foreign ports applying for bunkers shall require the master thereof to transmit together with his application the usual affidavit containing the following. First is the name and nationality of vessel. Second is the amount of fuel oil available on board for its propulsion at time of entry. Third is the vessel's daily consumption of oil at sea. Fourth is the vessel's daily consumption of oil in port. And fifth is the port or ports of call during the voyage and duration of vessel stay at each port. And the last is the amount of bunkers applied for. Section 24. Loading of cargo by distressed vessel. A distressed vessel in port desiring the unload cargo for the duration of the vessel's sojourn thereat may be issued a permit to discharge her cargo upon written request of the master or agent, approved by the collector of the customs under such terms and conditions he may deem proper. If the cargo's discharge will be cleared or entered in the port where they are discharged, the unloading of his class of cargo shall be subject to the same rules and regulations prescribed for cargoes destined for the port, unless authorized by a shipside discharge permit. Such cargoes shall be discharged into pier. If discharged into lighters, such lighters must be of the closed type and must be secured, locked, and sealed with a customs seal, and must remain under guard until the final disposition thereof is made. Section 25. Ship's mail. Ship's mail shall be examined as they are being taken from the ship, and all mails addressed to the persons other than the agents of the vessel shall be delivered to the mail clerk. Any dutiable articles or merchandise other than mail found in the mail bag shall be subject to duties and taxes or seizure. Section 26. Laborers and ship's laundry. All stevedores, laborers, and other persons of similar status shall be thoroughly searched by or under the immediate supervision of the customs inspector on board. Upon their leaving the vessel, any such person found with the pilfered articles or those not authorized for discharge in his person shall be arrested. For bundles of clothing, ship's linen or laundry, etc., which are to be taken ashore for laundering, a list shall be prepared by the inspector, who shall check them against such list upon their return off board, so that the corresponding duties and taxes may be assessed and collected on those unaccounted for before and vessel sails. Section 27. Seizures. The customs inspector or customs guard making seizure shall deliver to the owner of or the claimant, and if unclaimed, to the master of the vessel, a receipt describing the articles seized. He shall forward immediately the articles seized together with the seizure report and transfer note to the Chief Piers and Inspection Division. Section 28. Arrest. Upon searching a vessel or any persons on board thereof, the customs inspector or customs guard on board is authorized and required to search, arrest, and even detain, conformably with law, any person found committing act or acts contrary to the law. When a person is apprehended under such circumstances, the customs inspector on board shall conduct an informal investigation, after termination whereof the person arrested together with the evidence shall be turned over to the Enforcement of Security Service or ESS for appropriate action. A report in detail showing the name of the person arrested, the reason for the arrest, and the action taken shall be submitted without delay to the Chief Pierce and Inspection Division. Section 29. Small boats alongside vessel. Small boats authorized by the PPA to engage in ferry services may be permitted to come alongside the vessel. A customs guard shall be stationed at all times while a small boat, launch, or any watercraft is alongside, and it shall be thoroughly searched before being permitted to depart. Section 30. Customs guards for vessels lying alongside. A customs guard shall be detailed by the customs inspector on board of a vessel when another vessel is lying alongside, whose duty shall be to see that no contraband articles or merchandise is passed from one vessel to the another, or to the other. This duty will be arranged in rotary so that the vessel will be under continuous surveillance until its departure. Section 31. Having anchor and sail. Upon receipt of a notice of clearance, the customs inspector on board shall allow the vessel to heave anchor and sail. But if for any reason the ship does not leave and remains in port for more than 48 hours after the time of departure indicated in the clearance, the master of agents shall be required to secure from the customs clearance officer an extension of time for the departure, without which the original clearance shall be of no force or effect. Section 32. Repair of vessel equipment. Upon the filing of a bond under guard, Section 105 of the Tariff and Customs Code of the Philippines as amended, guaranteeing their re-exportation and approved by the Collector of Customs, and lending of sails, casks, chronometers, and other portions of the vessel's equipment for the purpose of having them repaired shall be permitted. The customs inspector shall describe the articles of or equipment so released in sufficient detail to enable easy and ready identification upon their return. Section 33. Conversion of vessel status. From foreign to coastwise. Vessels of foreign status may be converted to a coastwise status after the following requirements are fully complied with and submitted to the Collector of Customs through the customs clearance officers as prerequisite to the issuance of clearance. First, certification from the concerned office of the Bureau that import entry had been filed and duties and taxes had been paid or secured to be paid. Second is the certification of conversion issued by the Maritime Industry Authority. Third is the certification of the Chief Pierce and Inspection Division and Chief Bay Service Section with the Enforcement and Security Service or ESS as member of the searching team that the vessel has been fully searched for the contraband cargoes indicating therein the results of the searching mission. Fourth is the certification from the shipping agency attested by the customs inspector on board that all foreign cargoes are fully discharged from vessel. And fifth is the inventory list of ship's stores and saloons, and crew declaration list shall be duly accomplished, signed by the master of vessel and attested by the customs inspector on board. From coastwise to foreign. Vessels of coastwise status may be converted to a foreign status subject to the following requirements. First, the certification of conversion is issued by the Maritime Industry Authority. Second is duly processed export declarations or permits. Section 34. Letters to Collector. The Customs Senior Boarding Officer shall collect all letters in the vessel's possession addressed to the Collector of Customs and transmit them without delay of the Customs House. Section 35. Refuse and Garbage. No refuse, garbage, and the like shall be thrown or jettisoned inside any harbor, more especially while the ship is alongside piers. All damaged and rotten cargo shall be disposed of upon arrangement and permission of the Collector of Customs and at the area designated by said official or duly authorized representative after consultation with the Philippine Coast Guard and or the Department of Environmental and Natural Resources or DENR. Master of vessels desiring to load or discharge ballast shall first obtain permission from the Collector of Customs or Surveyor of the port and shall obey the instruction given them by the harbor master as to where the ballast shall be taken from or discharged as the case may be. Section 36. Firearms Care and Use. Care should be exercised in the use of firearms. The unnecessary display of firearms is prohibited. An employee should remember that the law will hold him personally responsible for the result of the use of firearms by him. A weapon should not be drawn or used except in self-defense or to prevent the commission of felony. While it is not intended that an officer or employee should jeopardize his own life or the life of an associate when danger threatens, it is intended that extreme caution and cool deliberation control his actions. Officers and employees shall not be permitted to carry firearms while on duty until they have been thoroughly instructed in the proper care and use of such weapons. All firearms will be inspected by the Chief, Piers and Inspection Division periodically to see that they are kept in condition for proper use. All sidearms must be holstered and properly carried off official duty. Section 37. Instructions relative to discharging, withdrawal, and loading of empty containers. First, discharging of empty containers. The shipping agent prior to the discharge of empty containers shall furnish the Customs Container Control Division a copy of the approved sequence of discharge and a separate listing of empty containers to be discharged from the carrying vessel for monitoring and aging purposes. Second is the withdrawal of empty containers. Section 28. Instructions relative to the withdrawal of shut-out containerized export. First, withdrawal of shut-out containerized export cargoes. All applications for the withdrawal of shut-out containerized export cargoes shall be directly filed with the Chief CCCD or Customs Container Control Division. Stop checking of the contents of the subject container shall no longer be required, but instead the following precautionary measures shall be undertaken. First, the application to withdraw shut-out containerized export cargoes shall be accompanied at all by the following: the certification of the shipping agent concerned attesting to such fact, an equipment interchange receipt or EIR, and a copy of export declaration or permit or inquiry. Next is the spot checking shall be confined only to determine whether the original shipping agent seal effects after the stuffing operations is intact. Next is the case containerized export cargoes or deliveries from a CBW with fact shall be indicated in the application. The same shall not be withdrawn unless accompanied by a customs guard who shall guard the same until the shipment is received by the assigned customs warehouseman, customs storekeeper at the CBW. For this purpose, the Chief Customs Container Control Division shall coordinate with the Chief Bonded Warehouse Operating Division concerned for the underguarding requirements. In case the particular CBW is not indicated in the application of the Chief Customs Container Control Division shall have a complete file of all active CBWS and accredited members obtained for each CBW operating division for reference purposes. Section 39. Shifting of cargoes. Shipping agents shall submit a written request for shifting cargoes to the office of the Chief, Pierce and Inspection Division, which in turn shall recommend its approval to the Deputy Collector for operations. Section 40. Divanning, stripping, and stuffing. Consignee shall submit a written request for divanning, stripping, and stuffing to the office of the Chief, Pierce, and Inspection Division, which in turn shall recommend its approval to the Deputy Collector for operations. Section 41. Direct-to-truck transfer. For direct transfer of container or cargo from vessel to truck, consignee or customs broker shall submit a written request to the office of the Chief, Pierce and Inspection Division, which in turn shall recommend its approval to the Deputy Collector for the operations. Section 42. Overtime permit. All requests for the overtime work by Pierce and Inspection Division personnel other than those regular activities mentioned in the manual shall be recommended by the Chief, Pierce and Inspection Division and approved by the Deputy Collector for operations. Section 43. Discharging of vessel sludge. All requests for discharging of vessel sludge shall be recommended by the Chief, Pierce and Inspection Division and approved by the Deputy Collector for operations. Sample of sludge shall be taken by the Customs Examiner from Formal Entry Division for examination purposes. Section 44. Bunkering permit. All requests for vessel bunkering or refuel shall be recommended for approval by the Chief, Pierce and Inspection Division to the Chief Port Operations Service or AOCG. Section 45. Leisure or racing yacht. The boarding formalities shall, as far as practicable, apply to leisure craft, yacht, foreign fishing vessel, and local fishing vessel from abroad. This provision shall include all vessels arriving in the country that are participants of regattas, or similar competitions. During boarding formalities, the master or owner of the yacht or other similar vessel shall manifest or state its intention or purpose of its journey in the Philippines. He must indicate if its voyage is for pleasure or indicate intended period to stay in the Philippines, convention from foreign to cost-wise payment and duties and taxes, or conduct of business in the Philippines. Next is the harbor regulations related to customs. Vessel entering port. All vessels entering any port of entry or coastwise in the Philippines shall show their colors and signals, their official numbers or letters, and such signals shall be kept flying till the vessel is boarded by the proper officials. All vessels within 2 miles before arriving at designated quarantine anchorage shall display their aforementioned signals. When mail is to be discharged, the vessel shall inform the port authorities by the prescribed signal at the earliest opportunity. Flags, signals, or calls. At the Philippine ports of entry, signals will be responded to and from the customs house or pilot signal tower. The following signals or calls shall be used in all Philippine ports of entry. For customs, the international code flag E and C. At night, 3 or 4 short blasts of whistle and waving of a light. For quarantine, international code flag is Q at the 4. For pilot, international code flag G or PT at night. First, the pyrotechnic light, commonly known as the blue light, every 15 minutes. Second is the bright white light, flash or shown at short frequent intervals just above the hull for about a minute or a time. And the next is the international called PT by flashing light. Next is explosiveness or inflammables. The international code flag is B at the 4. Next is the medical assistance. The international code flag or customs call F is contagious or infectious disease. International code flag E, Z, and Q. Next is the death. Customs and quarantine calls or international code flag E, N, L. Next is distress. By day, international code flags and C or gun or other explosive signals fired at intervals of about a minute, or distress signal consisting of a square flag having either above or below it a ball or anything resembling a ball at night. First is a gun or other explosive signals fired at intervals or about a minute. Second is flames on the vessel, as from a burning tar barrel, oil barrel, etc. Or the last is the rockets or shells throwing stars of any color or description fired one at a time at short intervals. Next is for mail. International code Y. Next is water boat. International code flags R, C, Q, or F, U. Next is PIDESS, customs call. Next is harbor master. International code flags G, Y, and T. Maneuvering. International code flag D at night. Quarantine requirements. Deaths, illness, or accidents involving physical to any person on board a vessel in harbor shall be at once reported to the collector of customs and the quarantine officer. Next is the repair or dry docking of vessel. No repairs except minors one shall be allowed on a vessel in a port without the permission of the collector of Customs of Deputy Collector for operations as well as its transfer to designated places of dry docking, and shall be subject to continuous underguarding until final clearance. Sunken vessel. Whenever the navigation of any harbor or navigable river tributary thereto shall be obstructed by any sunken vessel, boat, watercraft, or other similar obstruction has existed for a period longer than 30 days, or whenever abandonment can be established in a less space of time, the sunken vessel, boat, watercraft, or other obstruction may be broken up, removed, sold, or otherwise disposed of by the collector of custom in his discretion at the expenses of the owner, provided, however, that his navigation of a waterway is prevented or seriously endangered by any obstruction. The collector of customs may cause its removal immediately and before the expiration of 30 days at the expenses of the owner thereof. Police authority performed by customs officers. Customs officers have the power to arrest within harbor limits persons violating the customs, immigration, and navigation laws and regulations, and persons committing crimes or breaches of the peace. Such arrest shall be reported without delay to their superior officer. Any person who assaults, resists, opposes, or interferes in any manner with a customs officer in discharge of his duty shall be liable and subject to the penalties prescribed by law. Rat guards. When any vessel, either of foreign or Philippine registry, is at any dock, pier, wharf, quay, or bulkhead, such vessel shall take proper precaution to prevent the passage of rodents to or from the vessel. The vessel shall be fended off from the pier, wharf, quay, bulkhead, or dock not less than 6 feet, and acceptable rat guards, as prescribed, shall be fixed on all connecting lines, and in addition, all cargo nets, chutes, and similar devices extending between the vessel and the shore structure shall be removed at night unless in actual use, as shall all gangways and ladders unless guarded or properly lighted. No cargo shall be discharged from or received on board a vessel lying alongside a pier, wharf, quay, dock, or bulkhead, or in the stream before suitable rat guards have been placed on all the lines loading from the carriers to the vessel and from the vessel to the pier, wharf, quay, dock, and bulkhead, except in the case of coastwise vessel handling coastwise cargo to from the barges, lighters, or other carriers from the barges, lighters, or other carriers when the rat guard requirement on lines between vessel and carrier may be dispensed with. Other special anchorage. Likewise, all other boats and watercraft are prohibited to anchor or to linger around any vessel, whether moored at a pier or anchored in the harbor at a distance of less than 50 meters from said vessel, unless especially authorized by the collector of the customs. Specific regulation. No empty lighters or carriers shall lie at night alongside a Philippine government pier or alongside a vessel moored thereto, nor shall empty lighters or carriers be attached to such pier or vessel by cables or ropes, or attached to loaded or partly loaded carriers which may be alongside or fastened to such pier or vessel. All for our discussion. Have a nice day and God bless.